speaking of how the Communist Party is trying to control the narrative, we're also seeing them still struggling to manage the coronavirus situation. The WHO, the World Health Organization, just finally came out with their report about their investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. And thanks to close collaboration with Communist Party officials, they have no idea where it came from. Probably from an animal, though, not from a Chinese lab.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. Former CDC director said it very likely came from a Chinese lab, leaked accidentally, but ignore him. He's not part of these, international institutions dedicated to world health.
I mean, is he a virology expert who has personal links to the Wuhan virology lab where the leak might have taken place?
He probably doesn't, so you can't trust him. He obviously wouldn't know what the situation is like on the ground, not like our boy Peter Daszak.
What I found interesting is the right before the report was released, 60 Minutes did this segment about the WHO investigation, even though it wasn't really an investigation because they didn't actually get to investigate anything. They basically just went and spoke to Chinese scientists.
Investigation with Chinese characteristics.
And they, the Chinese scientists answered all their questions. Peter Daszak was one of the people interviewed by the 60 Minutes. And 60 Minutes was like, well, how do you know that this didn't come from a lab? And he was basically like, we asked them questions. And, what they said made sense, basically. So then Leslie Stahl was like, so you just start taking their word for it. And then she also interviewed...
There's no lab leak right here in the square where I'm standing.
Yeah, back to you, Michelle. Then she also, by the way, CGTN also interviewed Peter Daszak, and he talked about all of his experience with the Wuhan virology lab in the CGTN report.
Oh,
it's something that he, kind of didn't really want to go into in the 60 Minutes report for some reason.
Funny that.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that. 60 Minutes did actually mention it, but they also interviewed Jamie Metzel, who's one of these people who's been kind of leading the charge at we need an actual independent investigation into whether there was a lab leak because this WHO investigation doesn't cut it. And they also interviewed Matt Pottinger, who was a former national security advisor, who, basically was saying, because the Trump administration kind of came out and said that, hey, this is a possibility. It's a lab leak thing. Mm-hmm. We should be looking at this. So
a lot of credible people have said that at this point.
And interestingly, 60 Minutes did this whole episode and they talked to Peter Daszak, but they presented two different opposing viewpoints that it could have been a lab leak and we should look into it. So that I feel like the Chinese Communist Party whole clamp down on the WHO report, making sure that it said what they wanted it to say, may have backfired a little bit.
Oh, I hope. I hope it actually inspires action on the part of the world. I know the White House has said Americans deserve better information than the report gave. Though, also the Biden administration has decided not to withdraw funding from the WHO, which was something the Trump administration wanted to do.
They think that was always going to happen no matter what the WHO report said because the Biden administration believes in working with our allies and, we need to work within international organizations like the WHO.
Well, what happens when the international organizations are bought off by the CCP?
We can't admit that part.
I guess. And the funny thing is, it's not even bought off. Most of the WHO's funding comes from the U.S., from American taxpayers. So to say that the CCP has bought them off.
It's not necessarily through money for the WHO. It's more through kind of political influence.
I guess that must be it.
The WHO in 2003, 2004, when the SARS...
it's a very different beast.
It kind of went in and demanded to see the hospital that they were hiding in the cases in Beijing and all this stuff. So
they did a good job in 2003.
They did. And
then the CCP realized, wait, the WHO did their jobs. We can't have this.
Well, they basically got the next WHO head to be Margaret Chan, who was, she was from Hong Kong, but she was basically backed by Beijing. And then that's the start of things like the WHO stopping letting Taiwan become like a observer state and
Taiwan got excluded.
not mentioning like having to mention Taiwan in a specific way that makes it like a Chinese province, all this kind of stuff. So like that was the beginning of like the political pressure on the WHO.
Right. So within 15 years, the WHO had gone from being willing to be tough on China or any country that had an outbreak to being essentially willing to take the word of Chinese scientists / officials without actually doing any investigation and without pressuring them for an entire year.
And giving their kind of official stamp of approval. I mean, maybe they couldn't help the fact that they couldn't not get an investigation, but they didn't have to like legitimize it, right?
Yeah, but there were lots of things that the WHO could have done, even if they were blocked from being able to go in, which is the WHO could have just said from day one, well, either China gives us full access or we will discount anything they say and, make the following categorical assumptions about what's going on there. And their refusal to like publicly call out their lack of access as a serious problem is what kind of was this is a year ago, right? Like this was the beginning of the sort of dangerous era of the coronavirus spreading.
I mean, a year ago, the WHO was praising the CCP for their response to the coronavirus.
Even though it came out that through leaked internal conversations in the WHO, they were complaining internally about how China was not giving them any information.
But like, publicly, they had to be like, you're doing a great job.
Jorb. Oh, that takes me back.
Yeah.
Delaying calling it a pandemic for quite a while. Really, a lot of the reason the coronavirus is so bad, and health experts talked about this at the beginning, is that the WHO said, it's not a problem. Don't worry. Don't wear masks.
Oh, I mean, the mask thing was...
That's
anyway.
a whole other thing.
But like, the whole thing with the WHO and China now is that with the Chinese Communist Party kind of forcing the WHO report this way, they've kind of mainstreamed the ability to talk about the possibility of a lab leak. Half a year ago, I think half a year ago, 60 Minutes would not have done the story, right?
Yeah, I remember YouTube saying, like, anyone who even remotely mentions it might have come from a lab, shut down.
Because I think that there was like a conflation between the idea that it could have been an accidental lab leak with the idea that it was created in a lab.
Like it was a bioweapon purposely sent out.
And I think that's part of the thing that like the CCP promoted as well. Is that like if you conflate these things and make the lab leak thing sound like a conspiracy theory, then that's not going to get mainstream traction. People aren't going to talk about it. And now we've gotten to the point where people are talking about it.
I mean, an accidental lab leak is just not that hard to believe.
It's happened before. The SARS virus leaked in Beijing labs
there was
in 2007.
There was a second outbreak because of it.
As I always say, never underestimate the power of human incompetence.
Is that an original quote?
It's an original quote.
We should add it to our self-help book we're writing.
Which one? The one about awaken the missile within?
Or was the other one?
Something 7 lies to tell yourself.
Oh,
or
yes.
10 lies to tell yourself.
10 lies to tell yourself every morning.
Yeah.
It's like Jordan Peterson, but better. Why bother making your bed?
You don't have to make your bed. It doesn't matter anyway.
You're just going to sleep in it again unless you die in a gutter.
Wow.
Wow. It got dark really quickly. Perfect. That's chapter 1.
That's chapter 1. And then we'll talk about how to cook a lobster. I'm coming for you, Jordan Peterson.